Hey everybody, it's your girl Planet Tie on deck. I hope you guys are having a great day, afternoon, and or evening whenever you guys are seeing this. So today, we're going to be jumping into the true crime case of Mitchelle Blair, also known as the Freezer Killer. If you guys want to hear the information that I put together, all you guys got to do, stay tuned. Okay, so thank you guys so much for being back on deck. Without further ado, let's jump into this true crime. So, Mitchelle was born on May the 5th, 1979, and she reportedly lived in Detroit, Michigan. Documents state that she had one sibling by the name of Marlon Blair, yet I was unable to find any other information about the remainder members of her family, like her mother, father, what they did, how they lived, and, better yet, her background experience, from when she was a child growing up. So I'm just going to share with you guys what happened in her later part of life, okay? So in 2015, 35-year-old Mitchelle was living in apartment number 804 in a low-rent townhouse in Martin Luther King Jr. apartment complex on the city's near east side of Detroit with her 4 children. It was reported then that she was served with an eviction notice for not paying her rent. Now, her relatives say she was unable to keep a job and would always call them for money, but those calls stopped when they refused to help and advised her to get a job or go back to school. Now, I can't speak for everyone. I can speak for myself as having experience as a single mother, and I will say that there's definitely times in a person's life where they need that help. I don't know if perhaps her calls were too frequent to them and they felt like they just couldn't keep up because it's like, okay, you have to do something yourself, or what was it that made them turn away from her to not help her? I mean, a single mother with 4 kids, she definitely is going to need some help with something, whether it be groceries, whether it be school supplies, whether it be, help babysitting or something at some point. So for her family to reportedly say, hey, they turned her away, I wonder if they only turned her away after they had already did an abundance of help and they figured, now it's time for you to help yourself type thing. You guys light up the comments and let me know your thoughts on that. So Mitchelle apparently disregarded their advice because on the morning of March the 24th, 2015, she was served an eviction notice. But when she was served this notice, she wasn't even home. That's when a crew from the 36th District Court went inside and began removing furniture from her house. So they said, okay, she's been in this apartment this amount of time and she hasn't paid her rent, so she has to go. They signed off on the eviction notice and they went to go serve the notice. But when they got there, what they saw startled them. They were not expecting this. Okay, so documents detail Mitchelle's alleged beatings of her children with hot irons, wood planks, and extension cords. She also reportedly starved her daughter before strangling her to death 9 months after, and allegedly scalding and killing her son. So when they go in the house, they find a gruesome scene, things that they just did not expect, and then they start, doing a little bit more research on Mitchelle and found out that there was stuff that was already going on within her household. But I'm sure they had to wonder, why was nothing ever done before this time, prior to the eviction? Why was no other actions taken? You guys stay with this story, okay? So the picture that was painted through interviews with Mitchelle and the surviving children defies the images projected on her Facebook page, where she wrote, quote, "loyal to my babies," and posted a picture with the message, "there is no greater blessing than being called a mom." Now, in regards to, statements like that, parents, I'm going to say for the most part, most parents, and definitely moms, will love their children and give them their left and right arm if they have to, just for them to be able to breathe, sustain, to be okay, happy. That's the admirable parent. I'm going to say that's the majority of us parents, definitely the mothers, okay? So for her to make a statement like that, it's an alliance with anybody, if you ask me, who has kids, who had experience with kids, and who loves on them, okay? So it's not so out of ordinary that she would write something like that. So anyhow, the records also show that Child Protective Services workers, they twice investigated Mitchelle for abusing her children, and the abuse was substantiated, although she was allowed to retain custody. When doctors examined the 2 living children, they found them covered with welts and scars from repeated beatings, according to the courts. Now, this is the part that I don't understand, is piggybacking off the other thing that I just said up there. So you have a thing where child services has to step in for these children, right? Because there's reports, maybe neighbors are reporting it, maybe family members are reporting it, maybe the schools are reporting it. I don't know exactly how they came in, but there's reports of child abuse, right? So they go and they look at the kids, they talk to the kids, and they realize that, hey, this is true. These kids do have marks on them. They do seem undernourished and unfed. They do seem like they're not in a good, healthy state of mind, being or state. And then yet you find this information to be substantiated, but you allow the children to stay with her. I do think somebody has some explaining to do there, because I don't understand, why would you allow a child to stay in an abusive situation after it's been substantiated? At that point, should you not be held liable, as an authority figure to invoke action on them? Why are you not held accountable for your decision to allow the kids to stay in her custody, right? The reports are suggesting that the beatings were substantiated. You guys did find that these children were hurt. So anyhow, you guys light up the comments and let me know, have you guys heard of this case? Now, during police questioning, Blair told investigators that she became enraged in August 2012 after finding out that Stephen, which is her oldest son, I believe, was allegedly sexually assaulting her younger son. She placed him in a boiling tub of hot water until his feet blistered. The report doesn't say how he died, but that it happened on or about August the 30th. Now, Mitchelle told police she then wrapped him in his favorite blanket and placed him in the freezer, the report said. 9 months later, in May 2013, Mitchelle, her last name is Blair, guys, told police she found out that Stoney, which was her daughter, was allegedly sexually assaulting the same relative. So over the course of the next week, Mitchelle assaulted Tony, starving her, serving her only a bowl of oatmeal, a day and water, the report said. Now, here's the whole thing. This, is terrifying to hear. It's very sad and disheartening to hear. It's just horrendous to hear, and to think about that children had to suffer in any way, but less known in such a horrendous way like this. But there's a couple of things that stand out about this story to me. One, it's reported that Mitchelle had 4 kids. Where were any of the fathers? I don't know. I don't believe that she had the 4 kids with all the same guys, because I read other reports that said that the kids had different dads. So I'm not sure if it was 2 and 2, 3 and 1, whatever the case may be, but I know that some of the kids had different dads. So what I don't understand is where exactly were they? And why were they not in these children's life at all? Again, the plight and road of a single mother, if you've never experienced it, then I guess you couldn't say exactly how hard it is. Now, don't get me wrong. I am not trying to say in any way or even suggest it that it was okay for the actions that she taken. But I do think that if there was more of a support system around her, if she had someone to turn to, if she had someone she can get help from, this situation could have been a lot differently, because the reports I read said that, she was going to her family and they were basically turning her away. Not to say that they never helped, because I do think there's a certain case where we have relatives where we can help them until it looks like, they're never going to help themselves. They're never going to get out of this run. You just get frustrated and you just kind of say, okay, the next help is coming from you and the Lord, even though we know that all the help comes from Father God. But you guys know what I mean, right? So it could be a case like that. It could be something like that going on, where she just kind of overstayed her welcome with getting the help and the handouts. But what I do want to know is, where were any of these children's father? Where were any of their father? What role did they play in this? Did they offer any assistance? Did they ever try to help their children at all? Did they ever try to pick up their children? Did they notice that the children had any abuse, any symptoms of abuse, and what was their response to it? Now, if you guys have heard about this story and you guys have heard about the other moving parts, their fathers and what was going on there, feel free to light up the comments and weigh in, drop your opinion. I'd love to hear about it, okay? So let's get back into this. So finally, let's see. So after she starved her daughter Stoney, and after she was only serving her a bowl of oatmeal a day and water, and this was allegedly based on the reports, so finally, Stoney and Mitchelle got into a confrontation. Mitchelle strangled Stoney with the black shirt and suffocated her with the black garbage bag, according to the report. Now, the children did not mention any sexual abuse to the counselors, according to the juvenile court petition. This was after this, so this is the other children, the remaining children who were still living. Okay, so once they were taken from the home, they went and they had counselors because they had to be put into different foster care and stuff like that. But they didn't mention anything about sexual abuse to the counselors. Now, let's see. Reports state that Mitchelle's son, Stephen, he died on August the 30th, 2012, and Stoney died on May the 25th, 2013. Documents state that Mitchelle tortured Stephen for approximately 2 weeks prior to his death by tying a belt around his neck and throwing hot water on him while he was in the shower and putting a plastic bag over his head. The court petition said, adding that when Mitchelle found Stephen unresponsive, she wrapped him in bed linen and placed him in a deep freezer. For a year, the two surviving children, ages 8 and 7 at the time, lived in the small apartment near their slain siblings. 9-year-old Stephen Berry and 13-year-old Stoney Blair, whose frozen bodies were found on a Tuesday in a chest freezer near their apartment's front door, the children told police and social workers. Now, you guys, it's not to say that it could not happen, right? But one thing, okay, let me finish one thought before I go to the next one. So you guys just heard the ages of the kids, right? 9-year-old Stephen. He was her older son who was beaten and killed first because Mitchelle believed that he was molesting her younger son, right? This is what is alleged in the reports that I read. Okay, he was 9. And then her older daughter, Stoney, who was just 13, she was later killed for the same suspicion for molesting her younger brother, right? Now, the issue, that I have with this is not to say that it could never happen, because it could. Anything's possible in this world that we live in, right? But a 9-year-old and a 13-year-old, right? They're just going crazy allegedly molesting their younger sibling, right? And this was supposed to be what ignited Mitchelle's rage and had her take the actions that she took, right? So I don't know. I just think those ages are a little bit young for that to be happening. It's not to say that it can't happen, because it can. And especially when you're a kid, will be in an environment where they are used to abuse and they have learned abuse things. Maybe things have already happened to them and they're doing, it's like the repeat and repeat, right? Like somebody did it to you, so you return that to someone else, right? Hurt people, hurt other people, that type of thing. So we know it's plausible. Get all of that. But another thought of mine, rather, is in a situation like that, I wonder why Mitchelle didn't choose to try to get her children any counselor or anything else like that. Now, I do know that the reports say she was living in an impoverished place. People don't always have money for counselors, guys. And this is just me thinking out loud, as I'm still going on with this story. I get the other part of it. People don't always have money for counselors or people to talk to or to try to, they just don't. But to take such a drastic action based on this allegation. Another thing that I read about Mitchelle was that for her own background, in some court cases, it was found out that she was molested herself when she was a kid, and that had a huge impact on her feeling towards kids being assaulted. And so she took that to heart, and in a court interview, she was describing how she felt when it happened to her and the misery that she suffered as a byproduct of that. And that's one of the reasons why her rage went so intense when she felt the same thing was happening to her younger child from her older children. You guys with me? So that was one of the things that was cited that I did hear that she said. And it's all around. Okay, just all around, it's just an awful story. How everything happened, why it happened. Could there have been other actions that could have been taken? Sure, but I think one of the biggest things that could have helped Mitchelle as well as these kids more than anything would have been the help and resources of other people. Because sometimes people have things like mental health breaks and they suffer mental health issues, but there's nobody else around to kind of help and pull the load, so they just have to keep chugging along the best way that they can. Okay, again, not trying to make excuses, just saying it's a fact. Sometimes people really do need things like breaks and help, and if you just have no help at all, sometimes people turn to do very ugly, horrendous things. Like in this case, something horrendous was done. Okay, so it says that Mitchelle was arraigned on a Thursday in the 36th District Court on 4 counts of first-degree child abuse, which is a 15-year felony, and 1 count of committing child abuse first degree in the presence of another child. This is a felony that's punishable by up to life in prison. Her bond was initially set at $1 million. Now, the date that these offenses took place was August 30th, 2012, and May the 25th, 2013. Mitchelle was sentenced on July 17th, 2015, where she was given, she was given 2 life sentences, okay? Mitchelle confessed to the murders at the Wayne County Circuit Court. She told Judge Diane Hathaway that she killed her quote-unquote demons after finding out they were molesting her younger son, a claim that was never substantiated. So again, this is what she said the reason was that she actually killed her 2 other children is because they were molesting her younger son. But when her younger son went to foster care and he was speaking to counselors about what happened, him and as well as his other surviving sibling, the kids never mentioned that. They never mentioned anything about the trauma, about the abuse there. However, another thing is, just because the kids didn't mention it, I'm going to step on a ledge and say that doesn't mean it didn't happen. Because sometimes kids don't say things out of fear. Sometimes kids don't say things out of, they're trying to put it out of their head so they can try to move past it. It's kind of like somebody using that as a protective measure. You know what I mean? Kind of like to self-protect. It's like, nope, I'm not talking about this thing. I'm not acknowledging it. It did not happen. I don't remember it. It could be something else like that. Now, my thoughts and prayers are definitely with the surviving children. It has to be hard for them. Now, another report that I read stated that the children actually lived at that apartment alone because Mitchelle had allegedly, and I'm using the word allegedly, okay, had found another love interest, and she was staying in a separate apartment that was a few miles down the road. So those kids actually, after she, killed her older children or her other 2 children, and put their bodies in the freezer, she actually left the other kids in the house, the 2 younger kids, or the 2 younger kids, and she was living actually down the road a few miles down with her boyfriend, her love interest down there. Now that is all kind of, it just inks all kind of post-traumatic stress disorder. It just would, I couldn't imagine, I wouldn't be surprised if the kids, had some kind of a mental thing developed because of this. You know what I mean? Some kind of a psychotic break or something else like that. Because could you imagine, okay, as horrendous as it is to think about, could you really imagine, had your parents killed your siblings, put them in a freezer, and left them in a freezer located by the front door? And she left you in there with them while she went on to live her life, right? So that's what the reports are suggesting. But anyways, my thought is that this would have to be a terrifying experience for the kids who were left to deal with that. And at some point, unfortunately, kind of like I think it's called the Stockholm Syndrome, where people become used to abuse after it happens so much, right? Because the reports suggest that she killed the kids 9 months apart. So for 9 months, it was already one sibling was deceased and put in the freezer. And then 9 months later, the offense was repeated and the second kid was deceased and put in the freezer. And the only reason why this whole thing was bust open is because there was an eviction notice served on a place that, well, technically the report suggests that she did not live in, but her kids lived in, and the authorities ended up going in the place, and that's how they found the kids in the freezer. Okay, so the reports say that Mitchelle, her last name is Blair, is serving a life sentence without the possibility of parole at the Women's Huron Valley Correctional Facility for the murders of Stephen Berry 9 and Stony Blair 13. She has 2 life sentences ahead of her without the possibility of parole. So you guys light up the comments and let me know your opinion on this true crime. Have you guys heard about the true crime? What are your thoughts? I would love to hear that. That's all I have for you guys today. I'm going to leave the rest of this story right here. If I did not already include a news clipping, I probably will include something. If you guys are new here, please make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Tell anyone and everyone, your girls out here, telling you guys about true crime stories that you may or may not have heard of, but you never heard my opinion until now. And I hope that you guys have enjoyed it. Thank you guys so much for rocking with me. Like I always say, there's always another story to be told, but for now,